It's 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday evening. I'm William Brougham in Sydney, and you're watching at home on InViewTV, the programme where we interview people from the world of showbiz, such as actors, entertainers, musicians. We also have the odd artist. We also have business people, chefs, and occasionally the odd politician. But welcome to At Home on InViewTV. I am so excited. How has your week been? How are you coping at the moment? I'm in Sydney. I just had a beautiful couple of days in Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park. Absolutely stunning. You know, you often hear the term staycation. Well, a lot of us are making the most of it when we can. There's so much to see here in New South Wales, also wherever you may be. But whatever your situation, we do hope that you are coping, and we do thank you for your support here on At Home on InViewTV. Now, tonight, I am truly honoured and extremely excited because we're going to interview somebody who in his young life has achieved and done so much. Let me tell you a bit about him. He's an author, a producer, a presenter, a drag personality, and a health activist. But before we interview my good friend Tomi Grainger, let's find out a little bit more about him.
It's about a fair go.
Everyone should be treated equally.
I'm doing it for my brother.
We're doing it for our son.
Same rules for everyone.
It's about everyone having the same choices.
I'm doing it for her.
Everyone should be able to marry the person they love.
I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do.
You'll soon receive your marriage equality survey form, so commit now to voting yes.
Let's get it done.
My definition of clean eating was removing all refined carbohydrates, all gluten, all dairy, all sugar, all legumes. Anything that pretty much didn't fit into a paleo lifestyle was basically off limits 100% of the time.
So without further ado, let's bring forth the cake. When the drag queen walked in with the cake, I had not been that wet since I saw Basic Instinct.
And I thought I was the campus one here. But seriously, someone get me a champagne.
Oh my goodness, that is so camp. That's the epitome of the word camp. So much pink, so much colour, so much vibrance. My guest is, of course, Tomi Grainger, who's joining us from just up the road here in South Sydney. How are you, Tomi? Welcome to our...
Hi, I'm very good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm really good. All the better for having you on the programme. There's so much to unravel here. There's so much to unpack. But I want to take you to the beginning of that clip, to the marriage equality advert. How do you get involved in that?
That's a great question. I actually don't know how, well, I do, but it's one of those rare and amazing occasions where you sort of just fall into it. So go a few steps further back. The year previous to the Marriage Equality TVC, I was working for a production company that was running the broadcast for SBS's Mardi Gras. So I worked with the casting producer who then was looking for the talent on the commercial, and she thought I'd be the ideal fit. And there was a bunch of us that had to go on the day and read out the line, and obviously my voice was a bit deeper when we recorded that, but I guess I just delivered the line the best in the day, and the director asked me to be in the TVC.
How important was the marriage equality campaign to you?
It was very, it's not just me, obviously, it's to any person who identifies as LGBTQIA+, but it really did mean a lot to me, having grown up in the western suburbs of Sydney, going to a Catholic high school. I found it very difficult to, I guess, just be myself, and I was always almost subconsciously censoring what I was doing, my behaviour in all aspects, and I always felt out of place and uncomfortable. So to me, this was a defining moment to really speak out with I'd obviously already come out as gay several years previous to that. However, it was really that defining moment that I was able to sort of, knowing that everyone in Australia will be watching that, to really say it is about everyone having the same choices. And to me, it was all about having the human right to be able to marry somebody else that you love, and also having the choice not to marry someone if you don't want to. It all came down to a choice. It was a stance on recognition, and obviously not for everyone acceptance, but definitely a step towards greater tolerance for people across the broad spectrum of the community. And I think we're obviously by no means fully there yet, and I don't think we probably ever will be. I'd like to hope so, but definitely for me, it was a really a powerful moment to sort of be a part of that. I'm really grateful that I was able to be.
I think you make a good point when you talk about it's not so much just about marriage, it's about equality under the law and the choice to marry, but also the choice not to marry. Now, you mentioned you grew up in the western suburbs of Sydney as a young gay man. What were your experiences? Did you find it quite a supportive atmosphere?
Look, I don't want to. People always want to sort of fall down to a negative route when it comes to that, and saying, sort of, I guess, falling into a bit of a victim mentality, and that's by no means the case. Look, I was in a loving family, definitely more. I think my family still struggled to accept at the start, but definitely not a family that cast me aside or threw me out or anything like that. But a very loving family. However, I think growing up in quite a conservative part of Western Sydney that was quite Catholic, or still is quite Catholic. I went to the local Catholic school. People had quite, I will say it, narrow-minded perspectives, and they were quite stubborn in terms of their perceptions. And I was heavily bullied, as were a lot of other people in my situation. So I don't want to sort of lament on that, because I really do think it has helped me be the person I am today. It's helped build confidence, although having said that as well, growing up like that, it made you have to gain a lot more confidence, because you did feel quite insecure, and you automatically perceived yourself as being less than the rest of everyone else because you weren't fitting into the status quo. But it has enabled a sense of, I guess, ambition, drive, and a willingness not to give up. I think that's what growing up in that area really has taught me, both growing up in the western suburbs, but also being gay in that sense. I have a deep respect for people with that background, because I know how tough it was just on a daily basis to have people recognize and accept you for who you are, and how you constantly felt that there were elements of yourself that you had to censor in front of lots of different people in order just to get by.
Now, Tomi, you've also spoken about growing up that you struggled with body image and you had eating disorders. Now, you wrote a book a few years back called You Are Not Your Eating Disorder. Can you tell us about your own experiences and why it was so important to share them in a book?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, looking back now, I'm very much of the belief that my deep insecurities around my sexuality and around feeling accepted by society really did drive an eating disorder. I was actually quite an overweight child, and in my early teenage years. And then when I was 14 and a half, turning on 15, I rapidly dropped a lot of weight, and I received a lot of praise for that, because I was overweight originally. And there's obviously a culture in Western society around praising weight loss and, being at a healthy body weight, but that spiraled out of control. I became addicted to exercising and dieting. I didn't know any other way though, and I just wanted to feel that I had a normal body and feel accepted, being also naturally a ginger. So being in the western suburbs, overweight, ginger, gay, I felt like I had hit every branch of the unlucky tree going down. But looking back, absolutely not. That's not the case, and I don't feel sorry for myself at all. But that really did obviously spurn an eating disorder. And this is, you think back, this is many years ago. This is this is about, 16 years ago that this happened, right? And so at that time, eating disorders were not really well known. The research was all centered around it being female-centric. If you go back to the literature, and it still is printed today that it says she will behave this way, she will do this. And the way it was treated was also quite, they didn't treat the mental symptoms as much as they treated it as a physical condition at the time. So what happened ultimately was that I was hospitalized. I was put on a nasal gastric tube, wheelchair, the whole thing, you're not allowed to do anything. not allowed to go to the bathroom even, and under full surveillance 24 hours a day, and you're just fed up until you gain a lot of weight and they push you out. The problem with that is that you don't resolve the underlying psychological condition, and anorexia, which is what I had, is a symptom of some sort of underlying psychological condition. So what happened? I was now normal weight and heavily depressed. And I spiraled then into just obsessive eating still. I ended up having what we call as orthorexia now. There's a term for that. It's obsession with clean eating or healthy eating. So I found a new way to justify my control mechanism because I felt terrible about myself. And it wasn't until I really tackled that front on and wrote about it that I found a sense of release and an ability to put that in my past. That was one main reason why I wrote the book. The second was because I was contacted privately by a lot of people, by the parents, carers, loved ones, or people with eating disorders who reached out wanting some advice because they knew I'd recovered, but also that they saw me as a source of trust because I wasn't a doctor that had studied eating disorders but hadn't had one. And I think it's very, very difficult to understand the idea of an eating disorder until you go through it, because intellectually, it's ridiculous, right? But when it's a mental illness, it's actually the mental illness with the highest mortality rate. 1 in 2 don't recover. I think 1 in 4 commit suicide. So, and the others die from health complications, lots of different health complications. And I've got a lot of health complications as a result of only having really it for a lot smaller amount of time than other people would have, although 7 years is a long time.
Now,
so that was
from what I understand from the Butterfly Foundation, which deals with the issue of eating disorders, is that up to and over 1 million Australians suffer from an eating disorder. Now, you talked about the flaws when you were younger in the services offered to those who have eating disorders. What improvements do you think can be made and have been made?
That's an awesome question. I'm glad you asked it. So I think there's been a lot of improvement. First of all, group therapy is very important, but also one-on-one therapy to treat the condition is super important. Different forms are also really important. I don't think just counseling's enough. I honestly don't. This is a really entrenched psychological condition. It doesn't form overnight. It's not like you've got a bit of anxiety. People with eating disorders often have lots of underlying conditions as well. So it's anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder. They worry a lot, perfectionistic traits. The list goes on. And then with bulimia, there's obviously the activities and behaviors there as well. Addiction is super common in older people with eating disorders as well. Alcoholism, drug abuse. This is all intertwined with basically a voice in your head that is telling you that you're not worth it every day and making you do things to starve yourself or to over-exercise, etc., to throw up. So I definitely think therapy is the key thing. And I think an individualized and tailored approach is super important. I think it's getting better. I think it could be a lot better still, because lumping everyone into the one category with an eating disorder is never effective. It's like saying everyone who's depressed is depressed for the same reason, and everyone who is anxious just all needs to follow the same method or take the same pill and it'll be fine. That's never the case. So it's about addressing your underlying issues front on, and obviously a diet plan to help nourish the body that's going to restore weight if you're underweight, or develop a more healthy relationship with food, whether that's binge eating or food restriction, is super important alongside that as well. So not treating one part of the illness, but all parts.
Now, Tomi, one thing I've noticed, particularly on social media, Facebook, Instagram, etc., adverts. We're being bombarded with adverts to join gyms, to go on fad diets, lose that COVID belly. How important is the language that we use?
Look, there's always that question that comes up, and I've been asked this many times in interviews around the role of social media and advertising, in particular, in impacting eating disorders. Now, there's two schools of thought around this. I'm of the mentality that if you're going to seek it out, you'll find a way in any way or shape or form. They used to say it was magazines, and the magazine industry is dying now, right? And now they're saying it's social media. What's next? So I do think having a positive message out in the community is super important. But I think, look, there's pro-anorexic forums that have been blocked, but people are on Reddit trying to find them. So, you know, I think if you're searching out that information, you'll find it, because certain people are exposed to it every day and they go and then go have a piece of chocolate cake, or they go for a run. They don't even think about it, right? And then there's other people, they are heavily influenced by it. So I think it's, you know, advertising does have a role. And I work at TikTok now, and we are very strict on the advertising around diet products, around even fasting, intermittent fasting, banned, just so that, because we have obviously a younger demographic that are heavy users on our platform, to make sure that we're protecting them and also protecting brands from, you know, being influencing these people. But overall, I think, look, it's hard for me to comment because there's just so many different opinions out there. You know, there's paleo, vegan, flexitarian, intermittent fasting, you name it. And it's hard to say that one is bad and one's good, because some people will say, well, intermittent fasting is actually really good for, you know, restoring the gut microbiome and concentration, and you're still having a perfect healthy diet, etc. And other people say it's restricting. So I think it's about being discerning. And also, I do say that the media has a role to play in regulating certain ideas, particularly, say, for around diet pills or fat loss supplements or that sort of thing, because they really are, first of all, fads, and second of all, not healthy for your body. I mean, if narcotics are banned, why are we allowed to advertise these sort of things? But having said that as well, free country.
True. But Tomi, what I'd like to ask is, do you feel you've recovered, and how has your attitude towards food changed in recent years?
It's a great question as well, because I don't believe anyone fully recovers. I would say I'm definitely 100% weight restored. I do not have eating disorder traits or mentalities, but there's always that little thought in the back of your head that every so now and then creeps up. And I don't act on it, obviously, but it's a thought, and it's about practicing, you know, mindfulness. I meditate. I find that's really important, to acknowledge that thought's been in there and being okay with it, not letting it beat you up as well. Acknowledging it, saying, you know, this is the thought I'm having right now, and letting it go peacefully, like a cloud floating off into the distance. So I think that people can ultimately be almost completely, but I think that to say you're completely cured is to say almost that it's like epigenetics. Some people have that gene, and the lifestyle pulls the trigger. So that gene's always going to be there, and if you're put in a very stressful situation, it could happen again. But it's being acknowledging of that and being mindful of that I think that will ensure that doesn't happen to me again as well.
And we'll just let our viewers know that if you do need advice or help, you can contact the Butterfly Foundation on 1-800-334-673. 1-800-334-673. Now, Tomi, we've talked about your book. We've talked about the marriage equality advert you got involved in, and you mentioned TikTok, Instagram, 12.4 thousand followers. How does it feel?
Well, this day and age, that's nothing, right? That's just the standard amount.
1,500.
Well, look, I think being doing drag and posting a lot of stuff around that and entertainment, and back like 4 years ago, I was really heavy and active on Instagram, and it was like life to me, you know, getting those followers up, etc. But and I think they've dropped about 400 since. So I haven't been growing that at all. I think TikTok Instagram will always be around, but to me, TikTok's the next big thing. Yeah. If anyone's looking for somewhere to grow a platform or an audience, it's much faster to grow at this day and age on TikTok. If we've looked at the growth rate and the engagement levels across the board.
Why is TikTok so successful? Why is it so popular?
Because it has a community who cares, and it's I think it's two-way communication. We know that since the start of this year, 38% of people who have a TikTok account have created at least one TikTok. So it's very much an active platform as well. It also falls on trends really well. It's very music oriented. We know that 8 out of 10 of the last Billboard top 10 songs were launched on TikTok. So it's a platform where people can be really creative. And not be polished as well, which is what I love about it. That's why I joined the companies, because it's just it has such a positive, I haven't seen anything negative on TikTok in my life. I've never seen anything bad. It's not the place where people go to, vent. It's a place where they go to share their creativity, and and to challenge each other to come up with some cool and often quite crazy stuff. I don't know about you, but like every time I look at my feed, I'm thinking, how did someone come up with this? It's pretty random. I love it.
It's amazing. I was in a TikTok video. I have a friend who's got, I think, 2.3 million followers on TikTok, and I was in one of her videos. I didn't have a clue what I was doing.
Oh, what's her name? I'll have to look her up later, share it with the team.
Her name too. I honestly can't think, but she's really, really popular. She's also on Instagram. She's amazing.
Right.
Very popular also in the YouTube community. But Tomi, there's no end to your talent. You're also a producer. And before we talk about that, let's look at a clip from one of your pilots, My Fabulous Life.
People come from all walks of life, in all shapes and sizes.
That's about a size 2. I wouldn't get a thigh in that.
Join 3 unlikely friends on a series of outrageous adventures.
Yeah, I'll clean up, darling. Don't you worry.
Trials and tribulations. Celebration and success. As they travel across Australia to discover the true essence of what makes a fabulous life.
I swear, Tomi, you surround yourself with eccentrics. How did you get involved with My Fabulous Life?
Yeah, well, look, it was a pilot. We're not going to end up running with this one, but we've come up with many other projects since. It's opened plenty of other doors. But look, I always wanted to have a crack at producing a reality show, and I was wanting to work with a bunch of eccentric people on a show concept, and we shot it over about 5 or 6 weeks. We had so much fun filming the first episode. I mean, that was the G-rated content that we ended up filming. We had Kate Fisher, also Pora Malka, as well on the show, Maddie Samai from the Royal Housewives of Sydney. We had a bunch of, drag queens. I think we had like 10 or 12 drag queens in there in the show as well. We shot at Stonewall. We filmed all over. It was a lot of fun. But that one didn't go ahead. And like most pilots, it's a very tough market. When like Channel 10, they have pilot week and they shoot 10 to 12. And then only one gets through. So it's a very competitive marketplace. And I just made the decision afterwards that I wanted to sort of head more down the new media route, look at more social content, podcasting, that sort of thing, because I felt that was kind of where everything's heading. And I don't know, we saw today that there was that announcement that the Seven Network was so heavily impacted by coronavirus and how there's job cuts. And we've seen, people, Carrie Ann just lost her job on TV.
So in the media.
Yeah, it's not the golden era of television anymore. They used to say the golden era of cinema, and then it became the golden era of television. And it's definitely the, I won't say golden, I'll say it's the titanium era now of social and, VR and AR and new ways of interacting with people. And of course, this was very much accelerated by the coronavirus pandemic that's forced us to create content in new and exciting ways.
Now, I'll get on to COVID in just a moment. Earlier on, we saw a clip of you in full drag with a very heavy-looking birthday cake at Adventure Before Dementia. Can you tell us a bit about that and what's happened with it?
Sure. Oh, gosh, I think I have to go back a few years now. Well, it was shortlisted for Tropfest. It won the, I forgot the name of the film festival now. That's how terrible I am. It was in Queensland. Anyway, we went up, we got our prize for Best Documentary, which was fantastic. Oh, the Sanctuary Cove Film Festival. It's owned by Mike. He's the guy that used to be one of the hosts on Big Brother. He used to do, he did the last one. You can still probably, hear his voice on radio all the time. It was in a bunch of other ones. It was in a really big one in the States because it's quite a few years ago now. I'm thinking this is about 3 years ago. So it's almost a blur, to be honest. But it did really well. We were really happy with it. We had so much fun doing it. It's such a good feel-good story as well. So, yeah.
So what projects are you working on at the moment?
Well, we've just launched our just launched. I think it's about 7 or 8 weeks ago now. So we recorded our first season of a podcast with Kristin, who was in My Fabulous Life. And it's called Let's Just Talk About It, which covers all the taboo topics that you're never supposed to mention at the dinner table. We launched that with the Starter Pod, which is owned by Elevate Studio. So they've got a bunch of podcasts that they basically piloted onto the market, and they release an episode every week. And we interviewed people like Jack Vidgen, who won The Voice. We had Tristan Dishy from Hot Candy. We've had a former porn fluffer. We've had someone who started a dog charity, Brittany Bloomer, Pound Paws. We had a lot of
already.
Yeah, a lot of very diverse, interesting characters. But we cover a different topic every week, like plastic surgery, partying, business, you name it, we cover it. It's sex. We cover everything from my perspective, her perspective, and the guest perspective. So it's definitely not one to, as we mentioned, discuss around the dinner table or to listen to with kids in the car. But if you want a good laugh and just to relax after a stressful day at work, definitely recommend Let's Just Talk About It. And apart from that, I've just been working very much in my role at TikTok and being super busy there. So that's taking up 99% of my time at the moment.
What's Krista like to work with, Krista Bilic?
She's actually extremely good to work with. She is a very fast learner, and she takes criticism very well, which is very refreshing because often working with talent, which I have over the years, things get taken personally when they don't need to be. She sees criticism as a way to improve, and she likes people being straight up about, how she can deliver things better or be a bit more interesting in terms of her topics or whatever it is that we're doing. She's very good at taking criticism on board and building that and becoming a lot better very quickly. So she's a fast learner, and she's also extremely fun to work with because she's just, we're very similar in many ways, even though we obviously seem very different. And she's got an amazing sense of humor. And I think sense of humor is super important if you're going to work with someone that closely all the time.
We love Kristin. I've been watching your podcast. No punches are pulled, and no holes barred. Can't get enough of it. Now, Tomi, you're also a drag personality. Tell us more.
Yeah, well, I prefer to say personality because I know it's a drag queen, but look, I don't perform that much as comparison to most drag queens would. Earlier on, I did, and I've tried. Before COVID, I started resurfacing again. Working at Puffdorf, doing one of the drag competitions that was on at Universal at the moment, Slatest Day, which is currently paused. Got through to the first knockouts, and then it's on pause at the moment, which is okay because I need some time to recharge. But I also obviously do a lot of other stuff outside of that. So I do, acting, commercials, that sort of thing in drag, hosting in drag, podcasting in drag. So drag to me is like an extension of myself, and I don't just limit it to the idea of performing on a stage. I very much incorporate into many aspects of my creative endeavors. I just did an audition for a commercial the other day where I had to lie on a mattress as a drag queen and pretend that I'd fallen asleep. I mean, just, you know what I mean? Just I find drag avenue to break the ice and to meet strange, interesting, colourful, eccentric people as well.
Now, you've talked about your eating disorders and body image, yet you've done drag. That takes quite a lot of courage. Was it in any way a way to combat body image and to put yourself out there?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think it actually is kind of the opposite. I think it was a shelter a little bit. It was a way to boost confidence. I think it's very strange because you've got to have the confidence to do drag. And I mean, I started in drag in Germany, right? And I was living in a very small conservative city in the South. And they had never heard, well, a few of them had, but most hadn't heard of a drag queen. Most of them were all closeted who were gay. They, there's no one would ever hold hands on the street or anything like that. And then here was me just turning up at parties in drag, and I even went to, kid you not, one of the it was a neo-Nazi funded fraternity. I turned up in drag, and it was on, right? They were disgraced, but I had so much fun doing it, and it helped me I ended up having a pop-up nightclub there and doing drag shows, and it was a real way for me to boost my confidence because whenever I was insulted, or abused or comments were thrown my way, I kind of just had that as my drag person, having that, not me as a person. So it also helped me with confidence around people. It still does, to be honest. People have sort of said to me before, you're so much more confident in drag, and why is that? And I sort of think to myself, I think it's because I almost feel like I'm playing a character. It is me, yes. Ultimately. I'm not pretending to be somebody else. It really is me, but I'm just... mask. Yeah, I think to an extent. I think it's a mask, but not in a negative way, because it provides me, or it empowers me with a voice and a chance to, I guess, open up and be more of myself when I potentially would be censoring myself because I don't feel as acceptable. I almost think a drag queen can get away with anything, right? To an extent. But it's a great way to sort of, I think, test and learn.
Tomi, what advice would you give your younger self?
Don't be so hard on yourself. Don't be afraid, and just go for it. Just focus on what you want to do. Don't listen to what other people have to say. Obviously, take constructive criticism on board, but the naysayers and people who just have a negative, if people are providing just a negative outlook on what you're doing, they're not going to be helpful at all. You've just got to trust your gut, go with your instinct, and don't look back.
And finally, the golden question: what does the future hold for young Mr. Tomi Grainger?
Oh God, I wish I knew. I wish I had a crystal ball or I was psychic so I could tell you. Look, my ultimate dream would be to host my own sort of talk show like this, I guess. In what capacity, I don't know. I think that is kind of where my passion lies, and I think it's the next step for me. And because I love working with inspiring creative people. So I'd say I'm on the path loosely at the moment. I feel like I'm always heading in that direction. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm determined to.
Well, producer, author, presenter, drag personality and the health activist Tomi Grainger, thank you so much for joining us here on At Home on InViewTV. When you've got some more projects on the way, will you rejoin us?
Absolutely, I'd love to.
Thanks for joining us. Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Oh, I just love Tomi. What a fantastic person he is to interview, and such a talker. You can't shut him up, can you, or stop him? And that's what we love on this show. People with fascinating and interesting stories. Don't forget, you can join us on At Home on InViewTV every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. I want to thank today, particularly my executive producer, Bruce Mott, and of course, we must not forget our amazing and fantastic guest, Tomi Grainger. But most of all, and last but not least, I want to thank you, the viewer. Thanks for sticking with us here on At Home on InViewTV, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Have a fantastic week and an even better weekend. Toodle pip, bye-zy bye.